Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian, joined as always by my good mate Lockie, and the Blues are unfortunately now 0-3 to start the 2025 season after suffering a defeat to the Western Bulldogs by 8 points. We're here to review it all and try to make sense of what is going on currently at Carlton. And look, there's a lot of negativity going around, rightfully so. But that was weirdly definitely our best performance of the season. Ultimately, that's not enough. It's not good enough. We didn't get the chocolates, and a lot of our glaring issues have been laid bare. But Lockie, how are you feeling after that game? Is there any definitive takeaways or better understandings that you've been able to gain from our loss against the Dogs, whether it's positively or negatively? Where does that one kind of sit for you now?
I feel like you're going to have to ask me that question again in an hour. Much needed weekly therapy. Let's see if we can get some definitive answers. One of the things we're kind of just chatting about in the little pre-show, I'm keen for us to kind of discuss like what actually is important. Like I want to get a bit of a clearer idea by the end of this of what are the things that actually matter right now. What are the biggest things that aren't going right, and how can we turn them around?
No, absolutely love that. So if you're watching this here on YouTube, make sure to drop all your thoughts, all your comments in the comment section down below. If you're listening in audio form, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner and answer Lockie's big question to start this. What are the real issues? What isn't just a facade that's being built up by the media narratives? What are our issues and how can we possibly address them? So I guess I kind of wanted to start off slightly positive because I know things are so negative right now, and most of this episode will probably lean on that. So at least we could start with some sort of positivity. And I think after a really poor start, 0-2 going into this, a lot of big media backlash, negativity, going to that game, you kind of still didn't know what you're going to get from Carlton. Is there any sort of response? Are we going to go into our shells and just go out with a whimper? What Carlton are we going to get? One that's willing to fight. And I think we kind of couldn't have asked for a better start to a game. I thought the tackle pressure was great. The intensity was there. Ball movement, it was like a whole nother Carlton. Yeah. There was still that part of me in the back of my head saying, like, how long is this going to last? Is this truly us? But at least for a short period of time, is that the best you've seen Carlton play in quite some time? What did you make of at least how we started that contest?
Well, I guess we're definitely aligned pre-game in that I really had no idea what to expect going into this one. You were at the game, weren't you?
Yes. I was sweating it up in Marvel. I don't think I've ever been to a ground where it was as hot as that. It was gross.
I'm definitely keen to hear from you what the feeling was like in that first quarter, like whether you felt like, because for me on the couch, I won't lie, I was getting incredibly up and about. I was saying to my housemate that, like, I don't know, I was just feeling extremely confident, and the way that we were playing, it felt like things were clicking, and it felt like we were going to be able to do that for 4 quarters. So, yeah, I mean, I was extremely positive, and I guess, I shouldn't have been so surprised that the second half went the way it was, because that was the narrative that people are running, that we can't run out games and that we're not fit enough. But yes, unfortunately, I was still kind of surprised when the game took that turn.
Yeah, and I think that when everyone is so down on everything right now, you are looking for positives, you're looking for something, and obviously there's still glaring issues, and doing it for 1 quarter is not acceptable. We clearly need to do it for longer, but knowing that we're still capable fills me with at least the slightest glimmer of hope that that's at least still there. And starting that game, everything felt so connected, so positive. We were using short kicks around the ground. We're changing options. And it's something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. I don't know why more teams, particularly us, when we take a mark, why we're trying to go so quickly. Particularly for Carlton, where when we don't have options, when nothing's ahead of field, why don't for just 30 seconds just use a short option, go back, do a switch, see what's going on the other side of the field, see if you can create different angles, create space. Finally, we were doing that, and it was working. We were able to just be patient, control the football, slow it down, and we were chipping our way through and getting scores on the board, manufacturing some decent looks in front of goal. And clearly it didn't last. The Dogs flicked a switch and were able to nullify that. We couldn't get that control back. But if we can find ways to at least have that, and it feels like Voss was talking about that in his press conference, trying to play more us. Do you think that is something that is more sustainable that we can do for 4 quarters, or was that more due to the lack of pressure? Where did you see that kind of game style? Because for me, I haven't seen us play a real controlled, short kicking game style, maybe ever.
I'm so with you. Like, yeah, it often isn't just a Carlton thing. It's often something, like you said, that when I watch other teams, I think about why do they not take the opportunity to do that, to either take the heat out of the game at a moment where they're under pressure, or even the opposite, to just like maintain control. Like, that's how I was feeling. Like, we were up by 4 or 5 goals or whatever it was, and it's like let's just keep owning the ball. Like, what's the point of going long to the contest here? We know how this is going to play out. So yeah, I guess that's why it's so. And I can't look past anything but the work rate to try and, or fitness, whatever you want to call it, to understand why that doesn't happen later in games. Why are we so against doing that? Are players literally that spent that they can't work into space to present and be that option? It seems like what all the great teams do. Like, why are we so against that?
Yeah, well, that was going to be my question, because everything is the last few weeks has been we can't run out games, the second half fade outs. And I mean, first quarter we were plus 24 in uncontested marks. For the rest of the 3 quarters, we were negative 27 in uncontested marks, and just some other stats. We were up to halftime. We were still plus 11 uncontested marks. We're negative 14 for the rest. We're plus 3 uncontested possessions, negative 31 for the rest. Our scores so far in second halves, the big stat going around, 8 goals, 19, 67. And against us has been 22 goals, 12, 156. That's negative 89 in second halves. In this game, the Dogs scored 38 points off turnover in the second half and were plus 31 in uncontested possession. So clearly there's a big issue in the second halves and fading out. Do you see that as a fitness thing, or do you see that, which I'm seeing this narrative grow quite a lot this season, in the game plan and the system and what we're trying to do just takes so much out of our players that we're unable to run out these games? Do you have a clear, definitive, thought on the balance of those two?
They feel quite interlinked to me, I guess, though. In a way, I'm keen to hear your thought on that, because, like, yeah, I guess it can be both not being fit enough and not being fit enough for the game style that we're playing. I mean, I hate to, and then I guess to add this to the mix is like the mentality piece that we spoke about before round 1, which is, it's unfortunate where, you talk about like the Pies in 23 and how everybody knew that they were going to come hard at the end of games. And now the narrative is going to be growing that we're the opposite. And like how, and whether, if that seeps into the mentality of the players, and now no matter what happens this week at 3/4 time, no matter what the score is, the pressure is going to be on us to hold the lead. If we're up by 60, we're going to be thinking that we could bottle this. So I think that the mentality piece is probably also to add to your points around fitness.
And I've found that narrative a little interesting, because I think any Carlton supporter would say that's kind of just been us forever. Right now, like, when have we in the last 10 years sustained the game out for 4 quarters? It's a very rare occurrence. A lot of our wins have been absolutely storm in front in the first half and hold on, or run over the top of someone else. It's rarely we're just in front and hold that lead. And it is interesting when you look at the pressure ratings of the teams throughout that game, because the Doggies started really low at 150. And then last quarter ramped up that to 196. And we couldn't match that. Our last quarter was 179. Clearly an issue in that second half of not being able to bring our pressure and the opposition go very strongly against us. And I think that could be a big issue now going forward, that if this has become a thing that everyone is talking about, do clubs do that? Do they try to start a little bit slower, conserve their energy, thinking if this is at least close, we can run over the top? It's going to be a very interesting watch this space for the next at least a month or so to see how we handle this now that it's something that's being spoken about.
Yeah. But and to kind of just to address your fitness point, like it seems undeniable to me. Like you were at the game, but watching it on TV, like looking at the players, they look gassed, proper gassed in all 3 games.
They do. There's particularly last quarter, and I don't know if it is game plan, if it's just confidence, if it is fitness, if it's just all of those 3 things combined. But we kick that goal. Brody Kemp kicks that goal. We're in front, and you're thinking, okay, if we just genuinely get the next one, I think this is game over. And it felt so alive. And then as soon as, the Dogs get that one back, it just, I don't know if you got this feeling at all, but felt game over to me. Looking at how had played those last few minutes, there was a lack of energy. There was a lack of when we got the ball, a very clear and confident and decisive action that, okay, no, we can get this. We can keep going. We can do it. And weirdly, there was still a few moments that they had that, but just poor decision-making let them down. Lewis Young takes a mark. He can either go back and kick it from 50, which he did earlier. I'll be honest, when Lewis Young kicked one from 50, I turned to my mum and said, "Oh, surely we can't lose now if Lewis Young is doing this in a game of footy." But
good on him.
Just how do you see, I guess, the lack of composure as well as another piece that's been brought up, because it's never been our strong suit. Now that things are going really poorly and they're a lot easier, I think, to bring to the forefront, how are you seeing our ability to just make that right decision and also execute in these high pressure moments?
I made very little notes for this podcast because, like I mentioned to you earlier, like I need to use this to get more definitive opinions. But I kind of, on rewatching the game, I wrote down 6 moments that I felt like were exactly what you just said, like lacking composure, either with a poor decision or poor execution. And they were all moments that felt like obviously there's 1,000 moments that take place in the game, but others are more meaningful than others. And so sometimes when we like break down a loss, it'll always be about like what happened right at the end of the game. But just to put a few of them out to you,
list all 6.
Motlop's banana that he missed when we were 4 goals up, and he completely burned Evans in the corridor.
Yeah, he could have kept running, to be honest. He had time.
Mate, inexcusable to me that a small forward in our team is either missing that banana or passing up a player to kick their first goal for the team. I thought Young could hold his head up high with his performance in this game, but the miss that he had when we were up 34-5, and then they went end to end, just kick a goal. Massive. It would have made it, it would have made it 34-5, but instead it was 29-11. So completely different. There was a center clearance from Walshy where he had so much space and he just beautifully laced out Karmas. And they just went end to end with 3 kicks and kicked a goal. Like these are like 12-point plays where we should be kicking a goal in these circumstances, and they go all the way to the other end and kick one. We were up by 11. They had just scored and had momentum. Walsh had a clearance. I'm trying to remember this exact moment. Cottrell had basically an open goal or good pass to Charlie, and he sprayed it. I don't know if you remember that one. Cottrell kind of burst through the pack, and he was running maybe 20 meters out. And
yeah. He just looked up and went for it. Just blazed away.
No composure. This is maybe the most critical one. I'm keen for your thought. The Doherty snap that he had that had basically no power.
How he didn't. There was so many different things that could have happened there, and didn't make the distance. I couldn't believe it. Everyone around me was like, "How did you not at least like if you miss, that's almost better." Like not making the distance from it was just baffling.
And a minute later, they kick a
Yeah.
goal and the scores are tied. So, and then the last one was the one you touched on before. Like Young took that mark, open forward line, kicks it straight over Charlie's head to lob, and they go end to end with 4 kicks. Like so many of these moments were an opportunity for us to kick a goal, and they kick a goal within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like just a couple of these moments back and it's a win. And yeah, I bring these up because you mentioned the composure thing, and it's composure in the big moments at the end of games when it's on the line. But we also just got to take these chances throughout, and we're not even going to be in those situations.
No, 100%. I think it's a really good. No, it's very valid to bring all those up. I absolutely love it. It's so clear that there's beginning to be so many of these high pressure moments that we're just not taking, and it hurts us. And going back the other way, why are we so unable to then control it once we make the mistake? That's almost more important, that we're making these mistakes, but we're not able to rectify them immediately. And I think some of that has been where we are turning the ball over. I tried to really watch that at the game this week, knowing it was clearer conditions than the week prior against Hawthorn, where because it was wet, because it was strongly contested, it's hard to take all that evidence out of that and use that in so many other games just because the conditions aren't always like that. So clear footy at Marvel, our launch zone, where we attempt to kick the ball inside 50, is so shallow.
Yes.
And I don't know if... and this is obviously what a lot of teams try to do, is they try to contain you to a certain level. They can squeeze the ground, make it shorter, so they can then just defend one half. If we can just defend the 50 rather than the whole ground, then we'll get you to a certain point. Good luck finding an easy kick inside 50. And we far too often, I think after quarter time, we never really readjusted. We were getting the ball on the wing, and then it was, okay, I'll launch it to the 50. And sometimes we were going for these really precise, aggressive kicks, and I like the idea of that. But that's not the right area of the ground to go that aggressive kick, because
completely agree.
The margin for error is so short because we haven't set up behind the ground. If we lose possession of the football, we know we're not the fastest team on transition. We have issue defending transition. We can't make it so easy for them and give them so little of the ground to have to go. It's horrific for me. I don't know if this is something that is being addressed at any stage. I'd love someone to ask the question to see if it's something that is being spoken about. We're just giving them the ball and allowing a potential turnover to occur in the worst spot. And there's stages where we're getting the ball at a shallow avenue, and we are still launching it really deep and getting it into the pocket. So I feel like the directive has to be, if there's no option, you can't get anything happening, this has to be a torp to the goal square. We just cannot be losing this on the field. I've noticed that over the last few weeks, and that's become a big issue for me.
Or it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, if you're in that position, how is someone not able to make space to be a sideways option, to try and just get it a little bit further forward so that we don't have to do that? And you said it really well. Like, I made the note about the really high kick to that area, which so rarely works. But it's also about trying to hit somebody on a contested lead or whatever it is to that zone. It just feels like it so rarely works out. How can we not find a way to just get a bit deeper, which benefits both the offense and recovering defensively if it turns over? It's mind-boggling.
And I've noticed in a lot of these times from these really far deep away shots inside 50, they're straight intercept marks. And there was a lot of occasions where the Dogs, in a pack mark contest, were just easily taking it away. And I don't know if that is a poor entry, poor defending and work from our forwards, whatever it is, but it always feels, and maybe this is just the bias of a football supporter, but when we kick it high inside 50, always feels like it's a clean mark to the opposition. When it's the other way, it feels like it gets onto the ground and the opposition just get an easy shot at goal. Like, we're never able to really bring it to ground and get those easy looks in front of goal. But then when it goes down the other end, our defense does well to allow it not to be a mark, but then when it hits the ground, we're nowhere. And that's not really balancing up positively in our direction. I'm not sure exactly what the issue is and who's to blame, but just another thing that I've definitely been noticing.
Yeah. If I was going to take 8 hours and do like watch the whole game and pause it at every moment, I would want to understand how it seems like every time the ball hits the ground in our forward 50,
we're nowhere.
They are there first. It's crazy. It's crazy how often that happens.
And that allows, when there's so much space, so many options when the ball hits the ground, now they can spread. And now you're having to find the number off in defense, and you're already behind at that stage.
Yeah.
If you're trying to play catch up, the ball's already gone. And there's so many like defending transition issues that we have. Again, we conceded a goal from a kick in, which is just unforgivable. And I actually started noting this down where the Bulldogs from kick-ins had the same first kick about 8 behinds in a row, which was they went to their right, short kick, and they were out every single time. And all I was doing was sitting there going, hey, I've noticed that it's the same kick every time. Any danger in putting a man there? In going, okay, we've worked out what the Dogs are trying to do here. Let's try to corral it. Let's do anything. But ultimately, there was no.
You should have sent a message down, mate.
Tinkering.
They needed you. Play your role.
It was baffling. I don't know what was going on there, and that's been a theme for years now. Teams being able to just move the ball so easily out of defense, which is very frustrating. Were there any other, I guess, key notes, key takeaways that you got out of this game?
I guess I don't want to skim over, I think, how positive some of the moments were, particularly early. Like I said, I'd love to hear how you felt like the crowd was during these times. But like the Williams burst through the middle and then the great option to go to Charlie, the Sard launch that led to the Young goal square goal, like the Charlie, even though it wasn't the best kick, but the little candy sell to get his first one. Like, I don't know. I just thought all those moments were, like I said, I was extremely up and about.
Yeah, the atmosphere inside the grounds has been very strange. I was there for the Hawthorn game, and you know how I think this has been touched on by a few people, but you know how they do the name announcements? They go through each player. At the Hawthorn game, there was barely a cheer for anyone. And sometimes you get that for no one, but then Cripps and Charlie get the big, massive energy. There was really none of that. So I was very conscious of what was going to take place on Friday night. It was better, but there was definitely an apprehensive feeling of I just need to see something, which maybe allowed more energy to be created in that first quarter. As it was all transpiring, there was some good energy in the ground. It felt like, okay, maybe this is Carlton. Maybe we've figured it out. This is perfect. But I think at quarter time, there was just that little bit in everyone's mind of show me it again, and then I can truly believe. But I think the energy throughout was pretty good from the crowd. We were really willing things to happen. Ultimately, they just couldn't get over the line. As the game progressed, there was just a real sensation, and definitely for me, of I don't care how we do it. I don't care if it's a awful umpiring decision, if it's the most fumbly way to goal. Just we need a win.
Just win.
I don't care what we end up reviewing if it's not sustainable. Every negative that we've spoken about throughout the entirety of the podcast, could not care less. Just get me the win. And it's not there. And it makes the pressure on everything from here on out just compile. It makes it so much more difficult. One of the things I really wanted to touch on from this game, and when you look at the fine margins of this, kind of where we lost the game, and it's defensive 50 stoppages, Lockie. This has been such a big issue again for a while, but 3 clear goals we conceded from D50 stoppages. 2 at some crucial moments as well, as far as momentum's concerned. Now, the league average conceding in a game is 8 points.
Yeah.
We conceded 3 goals. You might even see we conceded 4 because at one stage we gave away a free kick direct from a stoppage, which probably gets counted as a D50 stoppage goal when the league average is 8 and we're constantly losing our concentration in these big moments. When we're still not playing amazingly, but doing enough well to make these margins close in the last 2 weeks, giving away such big opportunities to your opposition is just unforgivable. And what the root cause of that is, it feels like the obvious answer is just player concentration, but it just has to be fixed. We can't be giving away more than 1 goal a game here, particularly now that it has to be a focus every single week now.
How can it be concentration? How can it possibly be? Surely these players are so heightened in that situation. Like I didn't pay a lot of notice to these on rewatch. Like, is there culprits? Like, did you look at them? I don't know.
I definitely paid close attention to I think it's the Matt Kennedy goal where
who was on him?
Well, situationally, we left so much space at basically the back goal side of the contest.
Yep.
So we just allowed, if they won the hit, if the ball went there, they would have the clear run to goal. And I'd have to relook at the others to know the exact specifics of it. And someone who's a lot more smarter than myself at stoppage structures can surely figure out what is going wrong at these. But I feel like this has been a bit of an issue sometimes at centre bounces where we're not where we want to be. When you look at things that were highlighted in that Hawthorn game, it was look at all these examples of where they had a set plan, Hawthorn, to allow TDK to hit the ball to an area that isn't where he wants it. Clearly, TDK left-hander wants it in a certain area. We're giving him everywhere else. And rarely do we manufacture the space for us. Seems like oppositions are always tactically smarter to take away our strength. We can never allow our strength to be the winner. And that is kind of at show for these defensive 50 stoppages as well.
I was just watching the Kennedy one a couple of times as you spoke there. You can, if listeners are looking at this while we do it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Carlton players manning a player on screen, and every one of them is boundary side. So every Dogs player is leading the defender to the ball. And as you rightly said, the space to the left of the rucks is completely unmanned. So why Cowan is goal side at that moment is, like you said, you and I are not stoppage strategists, but I'd love to know why this is.
And there's often you'll see, if you freeze frame at a lot of loose balls around the ground, we're bees to the honeypot. We are getting sucked into the contest and we're not able to hold our width and trust in our players to win the football. As soon as the opposition manage to get their hands to it, they've got options to spread. And again, that was just so evident that every time the Dogs won possession, they had clear options to handball to, running direct to goal, carved us up far too many times. And while they weren't able to score a lot off it, I would say a lot of our defense came down to Wiedering and Jack Silvani's amazing last-ditch efforts near the goal line, rather than our full team defense holding up and not allowing easy looks at goal. Felt like it was a lot of individual brilliance, again, over system, which is just continuing to be a negative trend.
What did you make of Haynes' game? Putting him kind of in that bracket with the key guys.
I thought it was his best game for us by far. There were a lot of moments where he had to go, and I thought he did. Anyone who was on the wing sitting around me would know I was almost like his number one fan. I was very much cheering for Haynes every time he did those little things, because I've been very negative on him. But it's like one of those things where it was the same for Lewis Young. like if I feel like if I go really hard against a player and criticize them, if they do anything good, I'm probably the first to give them the biggest cheer for it because like at the end of the day, I want them to do really well. And I feel bad criticizing them. So when they show me a good sign, I'm like, yes, I'll give you the plaudits. I thought Haynes was really, really strong in a lot of moments, was able to take some marks, get his hands to it. One moment really stood out late in the game in the last quarter where there's still time for us to get a win. I can't remember exactly what he did, whether it was a mark, whether it was a spoil, whether it was a tackle, but he got possession of the ball after doing something great and then immediately turned the ball over. And it was like, that's the issue with you right now. You're better, but you were brought into this club as an experienced player. I shouldn't be treating your performances like a second year player.
Yep. Yeah. Completely
Where did you
agree.
see it?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think there is definitely something to be said about. I know lots of fans hate this discussion, but like the cohesion and the being able to work together as a group, I think it's evident to me that they already understand each other a little better as a foursome than they did a couple weeks ago, where it seemed like against Richmond, for example, like Haynes was just doing so many strange things and no one had trust in him. It feels to me like that is growing week by week, which is good. Which is why I actually hope that they keep those four in the team and they all stay healthy. So I don't want to change this up yet. That's my kind of contention on that. That I'm still optimistic that those four can work together better over time.
Yeah. And I mean, it's tough because round 2, we immediately go away from that with some key forward issues. Sauce goes down forward and we don't get to see it. They went back to it this week. I think I'm in your camp where
I like it
right now. And we sort of spoke about this before we started recording, but things are bad. Things aren't good, but I just need to see more before I can truly make my mind up on a lot. And I know a lot of people will say, look, it's been 4 years. How have you not made your mind up? But there's different iterations of things. And right now, let's be honest, even if we all agreed Voss isn't the guy, you sacking him right now doesn't necessarily do anything. You're not going to get something better. You can't bring in a coach right now and they'll automatically bring in a system, you'll win the flag. So you're kind of stuck with what we've got for now. You kind of just have to sit back and see how it'll all go and hope for the best. That's where I am with it. And with the back four, it's 3 games. Is that enough of a sample? Really, 2 games. Is that enough of a sample size for them to work it out? An interesting thing, I listened to Sam Mitchell on Dylan Friends because I just wanted to get any insight on someone who I really, I think everyone respects and thinks is one of the best coaching minds out there. And he made such a interesting comment because I haven't really heard many interviews from a coach, particularly a recent coach, or at least someone still in the game. And he was talking about guys like Battle and Barris coming into the club, and Dill was very excited, thinking, how good's this? You must love everything they're doing. And he was very quick to say that they were doing well, but that there was still so much they had to learn system-wise. Like, every single club does things slightly different. So while he would be putting himself in a position that under another coach was exactly where he needed to be, he was doing those right things. In the Hawthorn system, look, what you're doing isn't necessarily wrong, but it's not what we want you to do. And that was a bit of an eye-opener in, well, if these players that we think are absolute superstars are still having issues in, again, not necessarily doing the wrong thing, but not the right instruction, and that's taking time, it's probably going to take time for us as well. And maybe for a guy like Haynes, and I hate just making excuses for people. I hope the listeners aren't thinking I'm just doing that and just trying to be positive. But if you want to have that glass half full look on things, he's what, 32 or 33 something right now? That's his whole AFL career in a certain system. It might take a little time to adjust into something else, particularly when we all talk about how poor we defend as a team, how easy it is to move the ball through us. It's got to be tough for a defense to then deal with that. It might just be something that takes a little while to click.
Can I give you a question without notice on that topic?
Of course.
Because I'm genuinely just interested to hear what your perspective is on this. Do you think there is anything in the fact that he played for the Giants his whole career, often under the radar, access to the big stage a handful of times in finals and a grand final, to now coming into Carlton and the highest pressure kind of club at the moment on the biggest
I love that you brought this up because I have been thinking about this probably all weekend. One of the moments that I first thought about this was when they were calling the players' names out and, everyone's getting maybe a little bit of a cheer. Nick Haynes' name comes out, silence. And it just triggered a thought in my head of, gee, like he's just come from a club that obviously very small, but would have loved Nick Haynes. Like he was all Australian, one of their best players. He's come from a club that adored him to a club that within 2 games, it's don't want to see you again kind of vibes. And I definitely had that sort of perspective thinking, is he a player that can deal with that pressure? And is he maybe too old to truly have that fight to want to overcome dealing with something so new in this sense? Like now that you've had that whole career is a lot harder to adjust. And maybe the beast of Carlton are now crazy, super passionate fans that just need success, that are dying for it, that will cheer you like no one else. But if you do something bad, we'll let you know about it. That's just the kind of fan base we are. Maybe some people just can't handle that. And is that a bigger thing throughout this squad that we don't have enough players that want that? And I ended up going to like the Suns Melbourne game this weekend. And that was so strange going to a game that was empty at the G for a Victorian team, thinking and just again, going through these thoughts of what would it be like to play for a club that just the pressure on you is tiny. And then even Gold Coast, like you're nothing here. There is no one talking about you on the Gold Coast. No one's recognizing you. It must be so different. And what does that do to a player? And how can you handle that? And is that just part of the problem right now? We don't have guys who can handle that because it's so unique.
Well answered. Yeah, I'd love to kind of, I guess all we can do is get that perspective from a player themselves to understand whether that's true or not. I just don't know how there couldn't be some kind of truth to that. If you got called up this season to the bloody, I don't know, footy classified or whatever it is, are you gonna, is it just going to be business as usual talking Carlton on an entirely different platform? I don't know how it could be.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe that's why we've looked in recent years to draft guys that were at least leaders at their club. Lockie Cowan was a captain. We look at Jagger Smith, led his whole junior career. Are we now identifying certain traits in players that hoping they can handle this pressure because they've had to be the leader at their clubs throughout their entire junior careers? It's a very interesting point of view and something we're just going to have to keep our eye on.
I didn't expect to talk about this topic, but I've thought about it a little. Like, you know how like the destination club idea, and you'd think that like 12 months ago, players are looking at Hawthorn and being like, I want to play for that club.
Yeah.
Do you think the opposite could become the case for us? Could the criticism that comes to the players, like and the negativity that is being so loud in the community right now, do you think that players would look at that in a negative way, or is that just not a factor?
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's so many factors as to why a player would want to go to a different club. And obviously we get marquee games, we get a big crowd. There's so many things to love about Carlton, but having to be the one knowing there's so much expectation on you that it hasn't been there previously, like a Geelong or Hawthorn, Collingwood, big clubs, but they've had that success and have shown even, now they're still reasonably successful football clubs. So bringing someone in, you kind of know what you're dealing with. Being a club that I think it's like sort of us and Essendon right now, where still massive clubs, ravenous fan bases, but you're having to carry 30 years of trauma. And how hard is that to do? And maybe that will become a thing that players don't want to have to come and deal with that. I don't know, but I guess
I
to flip
wonder.
it the other way, if someone doesn't want that, I think then you wouldn't want that player. Like, you would be wanting the players that can handle that. That would be the exciting thing for me if players are saying, no, I want that on my shoulders. And that would probably be what leads you to a flag.
Yeah, that's exactly tied to the mentality discussion that we had, right? That you want the players that want that smoke.
100%. So I think that needs to be something that we definitely look at in the recruiting space. But maybe a positive. We saw for the first time this season the 3-headed dragon up forward. It wasn't Harry Mackay, it was Lewis Young, which was quite different. But first time we at least had seen that the 3 tall forwards under Michael Voss. Did you have any reflections, any takeaways from that small sample size in what you saw?
I do. I love it. It's easy to say when the goals are being kicked, but I guess what I envisioned for years of us wanting to have that third option properly came to fruition. Like, this is like, or respect to Lewis Young for the game that he played, but he's the furthest thing from a proper key forward. Kemp, who's still learning the craft, Curnow, who is clearly not 100% yet. And I thought that the way that they were making, like, not getting in each other's way.
Yes.
Like, I was, and you would know this better, but like, even just on the broadcast, I could see that the positioning that Young was putting himself in. I'm like, look at you making proper space for this forward line. Who would have thought that that's a good idea?
No, that was what surprised me the most out of it. Was there was so much space. I don't recall a moment where they got in each other's way.
No,
there was a lot of marks on the lead, and it's, if I can pick a positive to look forward to, is I'm very intrigued to see how Kemp goes with Harry in that spot, not Young, because the opposition probably don't need to put in as much work into a Lewis Young, and still in that environment, Kemp was able to flourish and create opportunities on the lead, which I was heavily critical of him so far this season in his footy IQ, his leading patterns. Everything just felt so off, and I was ready to write Kemp off and say, he's just not a forward. I haven't seen it. It's just not working. And then he turns around, and even without the 5 goals, taking that away, say he kicks 1 or 2, the way he was leading into space, it looked a lot smarter. And I was very impressed with that. How that works with Harry. Will they then get in each other's way? Because now you've got a guy compared to Lewis Young who probably won't want to do a role as much, will want more of that ball, will be more of a focal point with Charlie. Does that create less space? Or does it allow the reverse of that? I think it's something to at least watch for now. But when at the moment, as Carlton supporters, we're just trying to hold on to any positives we can. And that's where my mind is going at the moment. I'm going to be watching every game, Lockie. I'm going to be going to these things. I can't just be in that full negative headspace. I need some sort of glass half full. And that's, well, Kempy's kicked 5. I'm interested to see how that goes for the next few rounds.
I like it. Yeah, there's a few good points there. I'm very keen to see how it can work with Harry in instead. Like, a lot of it then is just about how we get the ball to them and make the most of those situations. Like, why is TDK currently the best player at making that right decision and then executing it? I think a few of the mids need to learn from him about executing and getting it to the forwards when they make that space.
No, 100%. And look, this is a big topic I wanted to try and flesh out, and it's one I think will really extend into the comment section here. This is one for everyone. In, again, trying to look at a more positive lens on things, because and I hope people aren't just taking this episode and a lot of what I'm saying as just deflecting all the negative, because we're 0-3. It's a good chance we'll be 0-4. So much is not going right. There's so many issues, clearly. But I think everything right now is just so tainted from that round 1 loss to Richmond. And I know you can't live in hypothetical worlds. You have to live in the present. But hypothetically, you win that game against Richmond by 41, whatever we're in front by. Then the rest of the season plays out as is.
Wow.
You're probably looking at things at a lens of, look, we haven't started great. It's pretty average. There's so much going wrong, but let's see the next month of football. And then let's make a further assessment. Whereas you lose that game, it's a horrific loss. I saw Richmond St Kilda. I went and saw the 3/4 of it in the flesh. Richmond are bad. They are horrific. They are everything we thought they were. Now, clearly, you can't just say, if we win that game, this is what it's going to be. But are we looking at things too negatively because of that loss? Where do you kind of sit in that conversation?
Oh, wow. That is a massive question.
Because it feels like we're holding on to not only that loss, but now everything you look at is, well, we lost to Richmond. And look at last season and how that ended. We're just adding on all these losses, and it's compounding to we're in the worst situation we've ever been in right now. And that might well and truly be the case. But I just wanted to throw the devil's advocate in there of, are we holding on to something too much?
Wow. This may be the most you've ever floored me with a question. I don't even know where to think about answering that. Because you're right. Like, yes, let's do what we like to do and go back to what we were thinking a month ago. And we looked at did we look at the first 3 or 4 games? And we said, well,
3 games.
3 games. And we said 2-1 was the pass mark, probably. So in this hypothetical world that you're saying, we would be 1-2. So we would be down on the expectations that we hope to have. I mean, it's undeniable to me that obviously things would be better, like would be more positive in that world. I don't know. I need to hear what you think about this because
it's the worst for the podcast, but I don't think I have a fully formed opinion of it either. Maybe it was me just in my brain trying to protect myself and look at the games going forward and trying not to just tar everything with that same brush of what happened round 1, what happened round 1, because clearly we now need to make up more wins. We're 0-3. It's the worst possible outcome, and you start to look at all the negatives, and there's no guarantee that just because we lost those games, we're just going to magically turn it around. More pressure mounts. It becomes more difficult to get that win. You saw that in the Dogs game late. It felt like the pressure of being 0-3 was causing decisions to not be made well, for the execution to lack. But
agreed.
And maybe it is completely fair to just say it happened. And you can't just give the mulligan because we haven't bounced back. But my headspace right now is, I want to see the next month of football.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not positive on things. I'm quite negative on things, even though if what I'm saying this episode doesn't reflect that. But I'm trying to withhold my complete judgment of burn everything down, sack everyone, even though that may be the case. It may be the only course of action. Change the whole list. All these things may be the truth. And there'll be people yelling in the comments, I'm sure, saying delusional for thinking otherwise. But like I said earlier, you can't change anything else. You kind of just have to back it in for now and hope it gets better. Or if not, change will be made.
Yeah.
But we've got some interesting fixtures coming up. Collingwood is a massive game now. Then we've got West Coast, and then he's at North Melbourne straight after that. I mean, this is very interesting to see where we'll be after that. Those 3 games of footy.
Fascinating.
And assessing things. Again, it's a hypothetical world, but you win all 3 of those, the narrative will start to change. They've got to do the work and make that happen. But just need to see a bigger sample size on everything right now. It's been 4 years. I know that'll get thrown in. I've said that myself round 1. It needs to be better. There's not too much we can do to change that for now.
I concur. It's a weird space where I'm desperate to see. I'm desperate to see more footy to add to this sample size that you mentioned, and I already am just dreading next Thursday, and I'm not enjoying. I'm not enjoying thinking about this.
It's the weirdest time. I feel like when things were going really bad in 23, it eventually got to a point where we were discussing and saying, I don't even know what to say on the podcast anymore. I'm just repeating the same things. Right now, it's in a similar vein. Like, we're still going to end up talking for probably 2 hours on this episode, but it's a different not knowing what to say than last time.
Yeah.
It does feel like we're repeating certain talking points throughout, but I just need to see what these boys can do. The pressure's there for them now. We've questioned mentality. We've questioned the coaching. They've got to dig deep and find a way out of it. They did it once before. Can they do it again? And my only positive on things being bad is if things are really bad, Lockie, you finally get to see what is horrific. What are all the areas, all your flaws, you know what you need to address. Addressing them's the difficult thing, getting those decisions correct. But if we had beaten Richmond, maybe we'd fallen over the line against the Dogs and just ended up having a very mediocre year, missed the 8. The end of the season, are you going to make those big changes that are needed, or are you going to kind of back it in? Because at the end of 23, we saw all those issues in the mid-season, and we kind of just backed it in and said, nah, Jack Martin will be fit, Marchbank will be fit, Cunners will be fine. Now, we saw some good, so let's just back this group in. Evidently, we probably should have made some moves that we didn't. So the only solace you have in us potentially being bad, it's not a great one, but it's so much easier to make change if things aren't going well. And if there clearly are problems that are holding us back, whether that be coaching, list, board members, whatever you want to throw at the wall and see which is the real issue. Maybe it's all of them. When you have poor performances, you can easily make change. And as bad as it is, maybe that's the baptism of fire this club needs.
I remember us having a really similar discussion to this in the pouring rain, if you know what I'm going to mention.
Oh, that was rough.
After the St Kilda game last year, where we were wondering whether, this was when we weren't sure whether we were going to be in finals or not, based on the other match. And we were wondering whether decision-making end of season would be different depending on basically whether Freo won that game or not. And the worry that scraping into finals would paper over cracks. And there was hard decisions made in this offseason for sure. God.
We'll see if they were the right ones by the test of time. But, Lockie, let's go to the listener questions because I feel like we might have ended up touching on a lot of what the questions are. But if you ever want a question, you can always hit us up on the socials at Navy Blue Corner. Links are in the description, in the show notes. You can DM us, tweet at us, do whatever you need to. We'll jot them down during the week. But every single time after the game on Twitter, at Navy Blue Corner, we ask, what questions do you have for us? And we try to answer them on the episode. So what have the lovely listeners had for us this week, Lockie?
I think a lot of these will be focusing on single players, which is good because we haven't really done that too much so far.
Love it.
So from Damien, they said, I just want to send some love to Lewis Young, Brody Kemp, and Jack Silvani. Definitely 3 of our best on the day. I fully agree. So here's a question from Karen. Any thoughts on what's happened to Blake Acres? Shadow of the player he's been the past few years. Dreaded back issue, the same as Walsh. Maybe it's no surprise they are 2 of our worst kicks at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting link as well with the back injury. But Acres' form has been horrific to start the year. Definitely not the player that we've seen in recent seasons.
Yeah.
Maybe to defend him slightly, I feel like that's what I've kind of done this episode. But
oh my God, stop being so optimistic.
I don't know if this is optimistic. It's probably just more defending him. But
okay,
if you look at our list right now, how many of our players do you think are playing well that we're getting their level or higher out of right now? So I find it slightly difficult to just highlight one player playing poorly, because most of our players right now and our best players that we need to play really well are performing poorly. And if your top 10 players are bad, you're probably not going to get wins. So how do we rectify that? How do we get more out of Akers? I'm not sure. At least we saw his trademark sort of touch on the line, or at least an attempt to. I don't think he got there in the end. Luckily, Weeders got a fingertip to it just before. But yeah, our wings at the moment are a bit of an issue. We've moved Ollie out of one. Has that factored into things? Has there been a role change? I'm not sure, but yeah, I really hope it's not the back injury that's making Walsh and Akers not being able to perform at their level.
Yeah, there's definitely a convo to be had about the wings, something that I don't have good answers to. Oh man, he did absolutely butcher the ball sometimes in this game, though. His kicking license is on thin ice.
Yeah, it's been bad. And even Walsh, like, the rhetoric around him has been kind of crazy so far to start the season. It feels like we're trying to find scapegoats, and Walsh has been one of those immediately. Thought he was a lot better this week. Still wasn't at his level, but getting better off another interrupted preseason. Obviously has that really glaring, horrific turnover kick inside 50 from the center clearance that everyone immediately sees that and makes their mind up on Walsh. But I feel like we need to calm down a little bit on... I'm hearing people on the train, Lockie, say he needs to be sent back to the twos and things like that. And I'm going, okay, I think we need to rein it in a little bit. Let's criticize, but let's be realistic. And then even on that, who are you bringing in for Sam Walsh? Seriously. So, yeah, it's not good, but we'll just have to see how it progresses.
Yeah, there was a reply from Davo to your tweet on that. He said, this has been happening for 3 years. It's not new. This is on Walsh's kicking. It's like he's kicking for meters gained, bomb and panic kicks, along with Doc and Cow. It's an easy fix, but doesn't seem to be called out by our coaches. It's killing us. I wish it was an easy fix.
Yeah. And then, like, it's that thing of he's never been the greatest kick in the world. So why are we not manufacturing things to get the strengths of our players at the forefront and hide the negatives? That's my bigger question on these things. Like, Blake Acres never been the greatest kick in the world. So is the issue of us not recruiting enough supporting cast? Are we not setting up our game style to suit the benefits of our players?
Yeah.
Those are the big questions I think that I'm going to be watching this season to try and make my mind up on it all.
Yeah. This is one from Andrew that I think we kind of have touched on, but Zach Williams looked a great spark this week in our team. I agree. So hopefully his injury isn't too serious. His question is, how come we played a transition game in the first half, shelved it in the back half, or was it just me saying that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, easiest thing to look at is the pressure rating of the Dogs changing from quarter one to the rest. 150 in the first quarter, then 198, 179, 196. Massive difference. Clearly, Bevo shifted things and didn't allow us to have so many easy uncontested marks because we never got those back throughout the game. The bigger question mark again goes to the coaching group of, it seems like it's another occasion where what we've been trying to do, what we've wanted to worked. As soon as that was taken away from us through some little adjustments from the opposition, why have we not been able to overcome that?
Yeah.
Until they can rectify that. And like, it concerned me a little bit in the presser. Voss was sort of asked about that, and he didn't seem to have an answer on why it didn't work. That was more glaring. If he sort of said, look, we tried a few things that didn't we weren't able to shift it. We'll keep working on that. The fact that he couldn't put his finger on why it went wrong was my biggest sort of alarm bells flashing in my head to look forward, where like it's all great spending the next week solving the issue. If we can't do it in 4 quarters, it's kind of what we're paying this whole coaching cohort to do. Someone needs to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, it's true. You know how I feel about those press conferences. I'm hoping that he's figured it out and he's like, let me just make everybody believe that I don't know. That's my glass half full take. I don't really believe that. There's probably 2 more that I'd like to touch on.
Yep,
I think
love it.
This was one of my points from earlier. Paul's been a little more straightforward than I was. Is Motlop a selfish player, or is he a player trying too hard to make an impression? There are at least 3 times where he either burnt a teammate or tried too much, and with each there was a genuine chance for a goal. Yeah.
I'm so fence sitting on this, and I apologize for that, Lockie, but it's so difficult for me to know, because on one hand, yes, there were times in the Hawthorn game he blazed away, times again he blazed away this week. But I've been so vocal on this podcast calling out for years a player that wants the moment, that just wants the goal, isn't stuffing around with the handball, has the confidence to say, I'll be the man and I'll get it done. So then I feel really tough in criticizing a player that wants that opportunity because I've cried out for it for so long.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be something where internally, what are his responsibilities and what are the coaches asking for him? Are they saying, if you're in this position, you go for it, or are you going the hands? That's probably where I'm horrifically fence sitting on that question, but I'll lean more towards, we have no selfish players in our forward line. Maybe Charlie's the only one that loves to just wheel around and go from 50 and say stuff everyone else, but he's kind of earned the license to do that. Everyone else in that forward line tends to be very team player. Someone else do it, I'll get the hands off. So I don't know. I'll back in Motlop for now.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid question.
That's a great point. I love it.
It's often one that it's the ends justifying the means type scenario where it's like, he kicks each of those goals and we're giving him the 3 votes.
Yeah.
And like in the Evans example for mine, like if he gives that ball off to Evans and Evans gets tackled because he didn't see the player or whatever, and then we're saying, be selfish, kick the goal.
It's tough.
It's
a great question, though.
It's such a hard one. For me, and often I think a lot of like kind of a running theme throughout the podcast is like the method of things and like the whole game, like us dissecting an entire game, and all that really matters is the win or the loss at the end of the day. And it's always the case when we win. How many positives are there for us to talk about? And when things are negative, everything's gone wrong. It's just footy.
100%.
Last one, Timmy Dub. I tell you what, you know what thought went through my head during this game? Hashtag 75, baby. We hit that 75, and I was like, Timmy Dub, we've done it. We've won. What do you have to say for yourself, Timmy? He says, off-field success, membership, profit, sponsorship can be a strength, and I think he means, or a weakness. Is the club more complacent knowing ongoing success doesn't have to rely on sustained home and away success, let alone a premiership? Are our membership numbers subconsciously being taken for granted?
Look, this is a great discussion. Love this. Thank you, Timmy Dub. And I've heard a lot of people go big in certain ways around this. And I think the easy narrative right now is, and I'm not trying to throw shade. Please don't think that that's it at all. But like, there's been some big voices in the Carlton community that their opinion is very much of it's corporate Carlton, and there's too many people at the club doing things that aren't football, caring about all these other things, and it's just this business. And because and they're like Timmy Dub's sort of thrown out there, because everything's working so well and they're focused on these other things, football isn't the one primary focus. And I get the thinking of that. Personally, I just disagree. Because at the end of the day, it is a business. Every football club's a business, as well as a football department. And you need both to be successful. You need money. You need you can attract the players. You can attract everything. And I personally don't think that having a marketing department whose job it is to brand the club, get more people across, a business department that is trying to get more sales, get more sponsorships, another department that's trying to find other, revenue streams for us and different social causes we can go after to help our publicity and to help build these connections, build the football club. I don't know. Am I being an idiot here in saying, like, think about your own business that you potentially work for as a job, and like what you're doing is focused on one thing, but you're not in, HR dealing with hiring and going through everything there and making sure the employees are happy and dealing with any internal issues. But could you say, oh, well, they're too focused on that, so how can they get the sales this week? It's for me, it's just completely different roles. I hope the guy that isn't on the membership phone isn't also making the game plan. I think they're two different things completely for me. And I can understand the complacency from maybe those at the top here, Lockie, okay, things are going well on one front, so maybe we don't need to focus too much on the football. But I feel like if the football drops, then you lose everything else. So you need the football to be good. And the one saving grace I think I have right now on the positive outlook and trajectory of Carlton Football Club is knowing Graham Wright, the CEO, in knowing that we've now got a guy in probably the most important position of this football club. The day-to-day runnings of everything is a football person. He is someone that has been a list manager. He's been a footy boss. Success, he knows what it is. Mm-hmm. Now he's leading that charge. And a great take I heard from someone else. Can't remember who it was. Apologies. So I'm going to absolutely steal it and make it my own, like I normally do. But perfect. They were saying throughout kind of the period of recent history, if you look at the presidents that we've had, it was where we've got some money issues. We need to bring in more revenue streams. Kane Little comes in as kind of the marketing guru to fix probably the business side of things. All of a sudden, everything's working on that front. We bring in a guy like Brian Cook for a bit of stability, someone who understands what it's like to run a football club, who's seen success, can look top down after our big review and fine-tune things. Mm-hmm. Now we're bringing in a guy who's football, who is purely, I know how the football department works. Everything else we've kind of got moving and sorted now. I think if someone cares about turning things around and making sure this is a good football club, it's that man. He's got a lot to prove. So, yeah.
I really like that.
Short, I don't think so. And I'd be shocked if it genuinely is. Because at the end of the day, you want to win a premiership and everything's guided towards that.
Yeah. I really think you answered that very well. One question I would put out there, and this is in agreement with you.
Go for it.
As kind of it's a hypothetical question, really. Anyone that, like, I question, are there people that choose to work in football, like for Carlton, that are doing that to get rich. I don't
think they're getting paid enough, Lockie. The soft cap is tiny.
Exactly.
And then, I don't know, like, I think about the board, and I know a lot gets spoken about them. And look, I've never been on a board before. I've definitely never been on a footy board. So I'm not coming from an area of expertise. I'm clearly speculating, as everyone else is, on the day-to-day runnings. But these are people that are volunteers. They're not getting paid for it, that run big, successful businesses. So maybe the issue is they don't have enough care because it's a side thing to them, because they're CEOs of something that is more important to their day-to-day than the Carlton Football Club. Maybe that's the argument, that we need people in these positions that can spend more time and have more care towards the football. But I kind of look back and say, they're giving up the only spare time they have in big, powerful positions that they don't need more networking, Lockie. President's like the CEO of JP Morgan. I don't think he needs to find some more contacts. I think he's sorted. He's got this. He's doing it because he wants, probably for the ego side of being like, I want to be the one that wins Carlton a premiership. I want to be the one that's in charge of the footy club I like. And at the end of the day, it's the CEO and those that are there day to day that have more of an effect for me. And it's just about getting those hires right and letting them do it all.
Yep. Yeah.
But if we lose, we're losing the memberships and the money will disappear. So I don't think there's complacency in that area.
Yeah, I agree.
That'll wrap up. Great question, though. Absolutely love it. But now, Lockie, I had one other little point before we briefly talk about the Collingwood game this week, and was something I wanted to talk about a lot last week, but then unfortunately we weren't able to sync up our calendars at all. We weren't able to get a Hawthorn review episode out. Apologies for that one. No one hates missing an episode more than us, but a lot of talk about club rhetoric, Michael Voss's press conferences, how he's talking to the media, and how I think the football club is aligning with the fans right now. And maybe that goes to what we just spoke about in the perception of they don't care about the football because the communication isn't aligned. What did you think of Michael Voss's press conference this week? Because last week, if we did record the podcast, I think 90% of it would have been me talking about his messaging and what he said in the change rooms afterwards about this being sustainable, and how he's bringing up inside 50 stats as if that matters, when isn't it more about effective inside 50s? You can have 100 inside 50s, but if I kick them straight to Buku Kamas, it's a pointless stat. So I wasn't happy with what I previously heard. What did you make of it this week? Was it any better? And do you have any thoughts about maybe the messaging of the club and the communication going through a really horrific patch, 0-3 to start the season?
Yeah. Well, listeners of the show know that you and I have differing opinions for once on like the communication side of the football club, and like the role of communication, transparency, the role of press conferences, etc. I think the press conferences this year have been bad.
Yes.
Yeah, lots of different ways you could go with it. Literally got me off on the wrong foot, the fact that the first thing that came out of his mouth was a chuckle. To the first question, little things like that just kind of get you even more offside than you need to be. And as I kind of mentioned before, like, I don't buy the fact that he should or will give honest thoughts in press conferences. I don't think that is always necessary. But to your point around whether, like, I think the press conferences should be used as a way to connect with the fans and the community. And with that as the goal, it is doing a poor job.
And I think that's my issue right now, Lockie. And I'll get to it because I think this press conference was a lot better. There was a lot of things I liked in this compared to the others. The Hawthorn one really rubbed me the wrong way. And it is around, someone needs to tell coaches, and particularly Michael Voss, that your press conference isn't you versus the media here, which it feels like that's the vibe I'm getting, where he's asked a question and he's trying to like bat them off and deal with that sort of question, deflect it, block it, make sure I come out on top in this duel that we've got here. It's not you and the journo. This is the insight that the fans have. The fans want to hear what you have to say after that performance. They're holding on to what you're saying to give them hope for next week. In everything's gone wrong, show me that you know what's going on and you can fix it, is pretty much what everyone tunes in for. Because this is one of the only little insights we have into the club. And previous weeks, I really didn't feel like I was getting that. There was no owning anything. There was no, look, we got this wrong. This isn't working well. There was no accountability. And the messaging felt like there was just a big disconnect. And I went back to that Inside 50s the week before where it felt very David Teague-esque of, here, pick a stat where we're in front to say that, oh, it's actually all going pretty well, when the whole footy community is looking at saying, well, it's not going well. So don't try and sell me this dishonesty. And maybe he's just not the best communicator in that way, but I'd say if he's not, then he probably shouldn't be in this position, because there is a way you can spin the positives and say, hey, look, there were certain areas that we are getting right that are going well. I'm looking at the stats, they're great, but clearly that's not working. And that's what I actually feel like he said this week. He said, I could show you all these stats, but clearly we're not things aren't going well. And I'm like, Vossi, that's what I've been asking for. A bit of honesty, a bit of rawness when things aren't going well. And there was a few quotes where he said, we're going to have to own that. And he also said, if we don't accept it, we won't get better. And it was like, finally, it felt a bit more galvanizing to me, where he was simply calling out that this is not working. It's kind of all I need you to say. And at one stage, he even says, it's up to me to make sure we do something about it, which I think that's the first time I've heard from Michael Voss fully put his hand up and say, yeah, it's on my shoulders. Let's get it done. And whether it turns around or it doesn't, that's what I want to hear from my coach. And at least when things are going bad, it's very easy to pile on and look for all the issues and say sack Voss and completely look at the negative. When you're deflecting, when you're being defensive, it's so easy. When you show me that, Vossi, it's a lot easier for me to start to get behind you and make me want you to be the coach that gets out of this rut. Because before that, I was thinking, okay, I've heard and seen enough. But now he seems to be owning it. And for me, I don't know, as a fan, I don't know how anyone else thinks, but gets me on side a little bit to say, okay, show me how you can get out of it now. That's my thoughts on that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm keen to hear in the comments other people's views on that as well. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this topic for a long time, and I don't really want to, because I don't feel that passionately about it. But there's so much about the press conferences that I don't like. Like you and I often talk about, like, the questions that get asked. It's like, oh my God, like you choose these questions when you have direct line to the coach to ask about actual specific interesting things. Also, the fact that it takes, like, when it takes place, like the game ends. How I would imagine it, he goes and does a little address to the players, and then bang, he's now confronting the world. Like, it doesn't give you, in my opinion, it wouldn't give time to digest and think about, like, what those narratives are that you want to share.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. Like, I do think it 100% shouldn't be about you versus the media, and it should be about what does he want the fans to know after that performance. So I question whether this setup, like, I'd much rather the day after the game, no reporters, or at least reporters that ask the right questions, and then Vossi just talks to us and says, I've slept on it. Here's what I think went wrong. Like, that, to me as a fan, I would be much more engaged in that than the questions that get thrown out about, like,
you can't even
it's not
hear.
looking good, is it? It's like, no shit.
Oh, the questions are horrific. It got a little bit better this week, I have to admit. There was a little bit more pressing on some issues.
I know. It's not a great week for me to say that, but yeah.
They're so bad. And how are we still in 2025 and there's no boom mic from the broadcaster so we can hear the people, the journos asking questions? The amount of times I have to like turn it up 100 on my volume just to listen to it, could barely hear it. And then Michael Voss comes back in and my ears are absolutely gone. Can't hear a thing because it's actually gone to regular volume. So thanks for that, guys. Some subtitles, maybe. Come on, give me something. But let's move on, Lockie. Give me your 3-2-1 votes for this game.
3, I'm giving to Kemp because you're putting 5 big ones through. I don't care. You are my best. I'm giving 2 to Silvani, who is probably running away with this award at the moment, considering he got 7 in round 1. So shout
You're
out
welcome.
to him. And I'm giving 1 to the All-Australian Ruckman, Tom DeCone.
Well, we've got the exact same players, but I'm pretty sure all in different orders. I gave my 3 to TDK. Thought he was by far our best, creating everything for us. Gee, that one tap, I think it was straight to Chera at the center bounce. That was absolutely delicious. I gave 2 to Brody Kemp because I did not expect him to kick 2, let alone 5. It was unbelievable. And then 1 to Sauce, who down back was just absolute brick wall. Let us know your votes in the comments as well. Very excited for that. Now we'll just quickly touch on the Collingwood game. Give that the slightest preview before we head off, Lockie. Clearly, we want this win. Clearly, there's a lot of deficiencies, things that need to get better heading into this. Do you have any little things that you want to see from this game at all? No. It's the hardest time to answer these questions, but anything at all, whether it's personnel?
Far out. I haven't thought about this for a second. Because like I said earlier, I'm kind of just not even looking forward to it, which is really sad at this stage. I'm just so desperate for wins. So desperate to get out of that bottom of the ladder grouping. That I genuinely am not going to give anything, because there is nothing but a win. That, kind of like you said, for this game, there's nothing that would. There's nothing that I can see that I'm going to be positive about unless we can just get that win. We've been so positive and optimistic this episode, and you've mentioned it a few times. Like, we don't want people to think that we're just extremely fine with how things are going. This is one of the most miserable times that I've ever had as a Carlton supporter.
No, I totally agree. It's been tough to go to the last few games of footy, and I tell you what, if I didn't work in the city, they would have been very tough to attend, particularly the Hawthorn game. If I didn't have to basically walk past the MCG to go home, like I don't know if I would have rocked up. Because like, I have to. I'm here. It's so stupid for me to go home now. But no, I think that's absolutely spot on in this game where
you go ahead.
Nothing will satisfy. There is nothing you can take out of this next game if it isn't a win. And I think I've tried my hardest in this Dogs game to have some sort of positive outlook because I know what will happen this week. And I think then I will go absolutely ham on everything if we lose this game against Collingwood. Because, like, let's be honest, from the Dogs game, we should have won that game. You can even look at the Hawthorn game and we put ourselves in a position to win, but you can maybe say, well, Hawthorn are really good. Dogs didn't have their 2 best midfielders playing. They didn't have before this season, probably their best key forward playing. And still, we couldn't get the job done. Not good enough. And now we come up against Collingwood, the team you probably least like. That's the one you don't want to have to play in this circumstance. And now you've got to deal with it. Team that's had the wood over us for quite some time. Mentally, everything. They've got to find a way to win. And I think, like I said, for the Dogs game, honestly, don't care how it happens. I don't care if one of their defenders handballs the ball through for a point and that wins us the game. Could not care less. Just as long as we walk away with the dub, I think that's all that matters.
Can I ask
you have any thoughts?
Really bad question.
Go for it.
I feel like you won't like this question. Would you take a draw right now?
Oh, look, over a loss probably because it's points. You got to bank the points.
Obviously, you would take it over a loss. That's not the question.
Well, would you take? I'll
Would
spin
you
it
rather
the
a
other
draw or a
way.
loss?
Would you take? Oh,
How's this for
you kick a
offensive?
goal after the siren to draw. I got to think this through. Okay, I got it. Would you rather you lead all day, and right at the last second, Elliot kicks a goal to draw it, or we're bad all day and we just lose? Heartbreak or just a shit loss? What's better in that circumstance? Because then in this case, you're taking either points, but it was a much worse moment to be in. Like how badly do we want these points, Lockie, is what I'm trying to give you right now.
Okay,
because I'll take the draw because it's points. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more psychotic that question is.
That's what I'm taking it. I was like, I mean, I'll take them over nothing, but if it meant true heartbreak, do you take that over a loss?
Oh wow! Just as you didn't answer my question, I'm not going to answer that one. We'll leave that to the listeners.
I won't answer it either. Last thing, team changes, Lockie. Is there any glaring things you saw from this game where you said he's never playing again, or why is this guy not playing? Lockie? I want him in there. What are your team changes?
Yeah, no. Again, I haven't thought about this one, so you'll have to let me know if there's anything obvious. I think.
Well, Zach Williams is out. Zach Williams out. So who comes in?
Zach Williams is out. Who comes in? I guess this could be Moya time, potentially. I guess Harry's also the other one that if he's up and running, I'd be bringing him back in. Unfortunately for Lewis, who, as we said, should hold his head high. I was surprised that Boyd was the sub.
Yes, weird.
I really thought it was going to be Evans. So I'd probably make that switch as well. You take it away.
I'll ask you one more before I happily take over. Harry, if he doesn't play, does Lewis Young just keep his spot?
Yep. I'd roll back what we had on the weekend.
Would you be worried if you bring in Moya for Zach Williams that it's too many marking kind of players, or do you think Moya's enough different?
Yeah. I think it would be enough different in this. Yeah. But who am I forgetting? Who else would even be possible to play in that role?
Not a lot, except for the man I am debuting as the sub. So my moves would be, look, as similar to you for the Harry one. If he comes in, Lewis makes way. If not, he can keep his spot and keep bombing him in from 50 meters out. Absolutely love that. I'm elevating Boyd from the sub into the starting lineup, which means Ollie Hollands is moving to a wing. He can rotate and he can go down half back if he wants to, but wings are a bit of an issue. So I want Walshy and Ollie sort of rotating there. And that means Zach Williams would then move to the sub and then out of the team. So I'm basically replacing a sub here.
Gotcha.
Because I reckon we can there's enough players in there. We can sort out that forward line role. They did it for 3 quarters. It's fine. We don't have a clear replacement, Lockie. And much like Haynes in the back line in that 4, I didn't love Evans, but if we're just going to keep yo-yoing him out of the team, when is he ever going to truly get an opportunity? While no one else is available, I kind of want to give him a patch and just see what it's like. But the man I'm debuting as a sub is Will White, because I've always said I want a versatile player as the sub. Someone can play a few different roles. He's got a bit of pace, got a bit of spark about them, and that is this guy. Loves a tackle, loves a run, can play half forward, can play small forward. Hell, throw him out on the wing. The guy has some jets to him. So I like that as just something different right now. Rather than throwing out a halfback as the sub, a Cooper Lord, big inside mid, not for me. Give me a bit of a spark. Debut coming on. That'll get the people going, surely. I like it.
God, I forgot about Lord and him being removed. Yeah, okay.
Lucas was dropped. Do you want Lucas back in?
You're the selection expert on this show, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, something different. But let me know your team changes. I'm sure there'll be more news throughout the week that'll make that a lot easier than us recording this on a Sunday night. But let us know your thoughts to everything that we covered in this episode. How you're feeling, mainly, because this is the therapy that I know I need every week. I know Lockie's the same. And look, I feel a little bit better. I feel like I forced myself to try to be positive to get there. But it's all about this week. It's all about this week against Collingwood. Get the win. And we just get a bit of respite for a week. That's all we're after. But again, let us know your thoughts to everything in the comments here on YouTube, or if you're listening in audio form at Navy Blue Corner. That is where you can keep in contact with us all week. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.